Hello, everybody, and welcome to Todd and Shane's Cloudy Podcast number 408, recorded live on Halloween 2018. I am your host, Deadpool, and sitting beside me is a lesser superhero.
The Man of Steel, Superman!
When we started this, he had his glasses on, and I didn't recognize him, and I thought somebody else was going to be co-hosting this week, but turns out it was Superman.
Yeah, I mean, Clark Kent was a great reporter. I'm sure he had interview skills. He could have really dug into our guests and found out their needs and wants.
Yeah, and then he left, and you showed up, and now I don't know what to do.
Sorry about that.
In our continuing thing, since we've hit the 400s, and Shane noticed this a couple weeks ago, this is episode number 408. So the HTTP code of the week is request timed out. That's 408. So
people keep hoping this show timeouts.
Yes, they're hoping beyond hope at some point.
You know, the other thing I think if I was a viewer, I would mock us mercilessly for is, right, we're a big time now. We need to be thinking more like the sweeps and TV. We should have recorded this Halloween episode, 3 weeks ago and been in a Halloween costume so that when someone listened to it on Halloween while they were watching their kid trick or treat, we would have been right there, right? Instead, they're eating turkey dinner, listening to us talk about wearing Halloween costumes. So we need to get better at that pre-showing.
Yeah, it reminds me, I watch Colbert, and like most of those late night folks, they don't work on Friday, so they record two shows on Thursday. They record the Friday show on Thursday. Yep. And Colbert is completely transparent about it. He's like, isn't it great Friday? What a great Friday crowd these people all are. So we should do that record. But I will do my level best to put out this podcast today as much as we can. I have a couple customer things, but we'll see about that.
Life altering right there. That is amazing. All right. So what do you got? Other than being Deadpool, what about you want to talk about somebody else that can help explore and save the day like Deadpool would?
Yeah. Well, so first let me take the mask off because I can't see my notes. I like the mask because I couldn't really see you. That was a big plus. But I can't see the notes. I can't see the chat room. I might not even be facing the right direction. I can't tell. So I'm going to...
Well, I wasn't going to tell you we did.
Yes.
That's why I was trying to keep the mask on. I was just going to try and get you to go topic to topic so that mask stay put.
Yep. Yeah, let me get that.
Yeah, I mean, once again, those of you that don't ever watch the show, I mean, Todd's got these fake, ridiculous muscles in. He's got a mask on. Oh, wow. Oh, it's hideous.
No, this is I just did some push-ups before the show. This is all real here. This is right there.
Someone please edit that out in post.
Take that out in post. Yeah. Okay. So this is a funny thing, and I have to go back in my notes. But just like a week or two ago, I was talking to a customer, and they're on Office 365, and they said, "We've got this page that's really slow, and we don't know why. How can we troubleshoot it?" And I said, well, we've got these things. You and I in the on-prem world have been fighting this for a long time, and we've got a long list of tools that we can look at that would cause this. But when you get in the cloud, that whole landscape changes. And so I said, well, gosh, it's been a while since I've done this, but you can do something like, find Fiddler, but now Fiddler's not really the same as it used to be anymore. But that was kind of our go-to tool. We'd load Fiddler up, we'd hit the page, we'd look at all the histogram stuff. So I brought up like Chrome's developer tools and tried to get in there, but it was a much tougher thing because you have to record it and go back and watch it later. It's very ugly. And I remember this was legitimately like a week ago thinking, man, we need a tool that will help you troubleshoot slow pages in Office 365. And then yesterday or the day before, I forget which day it was, this week's been a blur, I've been traveling, I break open my email and my buddies at SysKit, I love those guys, and not just because I'm on the payroll, but because they actually make great products. They released SysKit Insights 2.0, and the big thing that they were talking about, the big addition, is it helps you troubleshoot slow pages in Office 365. Now, I talk to those guys all the time, so, I mean, I don't know if I had like an instant messenger session with them open and they were listening to me talk this, but it is exactly the thing that I was talking to this customer. So I'm trying the other stuff. I'm like, well, they're thinking this customer was talking about, well, some customizations or whatever. So I'm using the old tricks you and I talked about back in the day. Create another site with the exact same template. Does it have that problem? That lets you know if it's a network thing or a browser thing or whatever. I mean, just trying all the stuff. SysKit Insights 2.0 does all of that stuff. So it allows you to see how long a page takes. It breaks the pieces of the page down and shows you what the slow parts are. It is it's exactly what I wish I'd have had 2 weeks ago so I could send it to this customer. Now I can't remember which customer it was, so I don't know who to send it to.
See, now I'm hearing SysKit is slow and terrible. They missed your need by 2 weeks. I mean, they need to anticipate what Todd Clint needs. So, SysKit, you can do better.
Yes, try. Talk to the Chinese. They've got my microwave hacked, and we can. And this just came out, and I've been on the road. This is the first morning I've spent in my office in quite a while, so I haven't had a chance to download this. But it looks like all the stuff that you and I loved about Fiddler from back in the day. So if you want to go out and grab this tool from SysKit, it's SysKit's Insight. You can go to syskit.com and products, check it out. They've got all kinds of great products, and I think there's a free trial or something. I don't even remember. There's a download link. That's all you need. But check that out, and I'll be curious what you guys think. I like Shane and I were talking about, we don't get into the business of troubleshooting pages much anymore, so I'm curious if this comes up as often as I think it does, if it's as handy as I think it is. But thanks to SysKit for scratching that particular itch.
They're nice people.
I love those guys. I'm going to get to see them in a month. I'm very excited.
Well, so speaking of things that happen in November, tomorrow's November 1st. I feel like there's something you want to tell us about tomorrow, November 1st.
Yeah, like 3 weeks till Thanksgiving. I love mashed potatoes and gravy and turkey. Very exciting.
I thought I was watching Detroit play football. That's
one of my kids' birthdays is in November. Isn't Boxing Day up in Canada? I've always been a big Boxing Day fan. I love Boxing Days. The other thing is starting tomorrow, in fewer than 24 hours, I will be an employee of Simpraxis Consulting with the guy, maybe you've heard of him, Mark Anderson, a developer named Julie Turner. They're bringing me into the fold. I'm going to go work for those guys.
That is crazy. Are you gonna do something new like janitorial services? Are you going into Linux? What are you going to do for these kids?
They've got some sheds that they need painted. Some stuff like that. Some tires they need carried from one side of the yard to another. It sounds like I'll be very busy my first few days there. Yeah.
Very nice. So SharePoint work then? Is that?
Yeah, and it's one of those weird sort of just things that happened when I went out on my own, however long ago. Mark is kind of so he and Julie's skills very much complement each other. Julie's a hardcore dev, C# and all of those things, and REST and SOAP and all things that I don't understand.
Jason guy.
Yeah, she's got a thing for Jay. I don't know. That's when her husband finds out about that. It's not gonna be pretty. And then Mark is also a developer, but he does more of the client side stuff. Like he made the SP services thing a long time ago, and they kept having customers that needed those skills, but needed also things that they didn't do. So for several months, I've been helping them out with other projects, and this has been going on forever. And when I saw him at SP TechCon here a couple of months ago, we were all just shooting, sitting around shooting the breeze. And Mark's like, "Hey, and we should just quit sniffing around each other. Let's just put a ring on this and let's make it official." And I said, "Well, gosh, it's not the worst offer I've had this week." So it's kind of when we started the process, and I think it's going to be a good time. There's just a lot of these migrations and things like that where their skills are needed, but my skills are needed, and it's been a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to it.
No, that's the classic story, right? Devs realize that they actually need us infrastructure people. They can't dev on things that don't exist. They need a platform to do that on.
Yep.
And I mean, if you rewind back to like 2003, that was how I got my first SharePoint job, right? It was a guy that I knew was a dev, and he was getting into the SharePoint thing, and he realized that while he could help people with SharePoint and collaboration, he didn't know how to install SQL and AD and make servers, talk to each other. And so that was how I got my start in SharePoint. It was the same story, just 1,800 years ago. Yeah.
It's been good. I mean, I've been doing identity stuff and just all these things that I love to do. And essentially, it's just I'm doing all the stuff that I've been doing, but I'm doing it primarily with our customers. So it's been a lot of fun. And I've known Mark forever. It's one of those deals where I don't remember when I didn't know Mark. Like, it's just always been there. And then Julie, the last 3 or 4 years when she started working with Mark. So no, it's a good time. It's going to be a lot of fun. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, I would agree. I also remember not knowing Mark. So I would have no guess as to what year. I couldn't give you a 3-year range of when I didn't work.
No, it's just always been there. So good, folks. So that starts tomorrow. So for me, all the same stuff applies. If you for people who listen, if you want training or any of that kind of stuff, reach out to me. It's all the same things as before. It's just that Mark does all the back end stuff and the billing and all those things. And then I just got people that have to talk to me during the day.
Sorry. All right. So But to kind of finish out what you were doing pre-mark, right? You know, we're going to have post-mark and pre-mark.
PM and PM. Wait, that doesn't work.
But with part of that, we've got, you know, you've been doing some stuff in the training space. So, you know,
Yeah.
we all know I'm a world-class trainer. We know you kind of
Do
want to be a
we
trainer.
know that? Boy,
So
water's
what kind of,
wet. No, I don't know if we all.
tell me about your week training.
It's been, so I've had a couple of things, and for whatever reason, just because of schedules and all that, I was on site with one customer on Friday doing training in Omaha. And then yesterday and Monday, I was on site with another customer in Nashville doing training. And it's sadly, it wasn't the same training, so I couldn't just take the training I did on Friday and redo it on Monday and Tuesday. But there's just been a lot of increased excitement and interest in Office 365, which is weird because like it's always been there, but it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. The snowball's getting bigger. It's been very exciting.
Yeah, they, you know, and I think that's one of the things that people like us, you know, and the ecosystem of people we know really struggles with is there is just millions of new people to Office 365 and SharePoint almost every day. And
Yeah.
right, we're all like, you know, why would you ever do a one-on-one session? We covered that 10 years ago because people want to see a session today about where
Yeah.
they're at in their path. And people really struggle with that. Microsoft's probably the worst at it. They can never fathom putting on content that they've done in the past. But you and I, you know, in the SharePoint space proved it time and time again, man. Admin 101. How many times did we teach that same exact deck and have the biggest session and the highest rated session at the conference every single year?
Yeah, it never fails to fill the room. And this is something, if you've been around Shane and I long enough, we've got this bit where I assume I've got the curse of knowledge runs deep with me, and I assume if I know something, it's so obvious that everybody knows it, so I won't talk about it. And then Shane will give the speech that he just gave about how there's always new people and they don't know that. But it's all very true. And now I found myself giving that same speech to somebody if I'm talking to a customer, because I try to encourage all of my customers to share the knowledge, every one of them, because we start talking and inevitably one of my customers will be like, well, I had to do this thing and I couldn't figure out how to do it. So I went out and found this blog post and I did this thing and look at this, you know, this column I created or whatever. I'm like, that's great. You should blog that. And they're like, nah, nobody would use that. And I'm like, well, didn't you just use that?
5 minutes ago?
I mean, aren't you just proving yourself? And that's what I tell them. Like, everybody has something to offer because everybody falls for this you know, curse of knowledge thing that I do. Once they figure it out, they're like, that's simple. And so I definitely, I'm on both sides of that right now. I get it from you and I give it to other people. It's a thing, yeah.
Well, and I guess to go full circle on that, right? You're the one that taught me about the concept. I just grabbed onto the concept right away when you first brought it up to me. And you've been like years in the accepting of the concept that you taught me. So how weird is that?
Yeah, and I have a really tough time not taking people's knowledge for granted when I'm teaching classes. And so one of the things that I do, and this is something that you and I have done forever, I assume every instructor does it, when I teach a class, the very first thing is going around the room and just saying, who are you? What do you do? What do you want to get out of this class? Where are your strong areas? You know, if you could be any kind of a tree, what kind of tree would you be? That kind of stuff. And it reminds me that people don't know all the things that I know. And that's very helpful.
Yeah, you know, so like I was at the that conference in Phoenix a couple weeks ago, you know, so 7,000-ish people there. And so I was emceeing the Microsoft panel. So, yeah, I don't know, maybe 1,000 people showed up in that room. I don't know what the number was. I didn't try to count.
Yeah, that's usually what the other person does. When I'm talking, Shane counts. When Shane's talking, I count. Yeah,
absolutely true. But so I said, you know, how many of you know anything about flow other than the word FLOW, right? And over 2/3 of the room raised their hand. They didn't know anything about the platform. I'm like, you know, and I have to keep reminding Microsoft of this. Like, we need to do more advanced stuff. Flow. I'm like, no, we need to do Flow 101. I have a blank screen. What happens? We need to do that session for the next 5 years over and over and over and over and over again. That's how your product's going to be successful, not teaching people how to do rocket science and get to Mars with Flow. That applies to one person. His name's probably Serge or John Liu, right? One of those two guys.
Yeah, and so I agree totally. And I know that on numerous occasions with numerous technologies, if I'm a beginner and I just don't really have that foundation strong, but you know, the same way you and I learned PowerShell, I've got a thing that I want to do, and I've got this new platform that I need to learn, and that's how I'm going to learn that platform, by doing the thing. And so I go out and I try to find a way to do the thing, and people have blog posts or videos, but they miss the foundational part and they skip right to the fancy stuff at the end. And I can't start, and so one of my favorite ones is I do a bunch of little projects with Raspberry Pis, and every little project that I find with Raspberry Pis annoyingly always starts with, here's how you put the OS on your card. Here's how you update the OS. And I mean, it's annoying for me now because I know how to do that, but I'm absolutely glad that they do that. So any idiot who starts with this is like, here's all the stuff that we assume is in place, but if you don't know how to do it, here's all the links. And I'm like, this is why this platform is taken off. This is why people are doing this. So I'm with you 100%.
Very cool. Anyway, I'm glad to hear you got to do some training. It's always, I always learn something when I have to write about other training as well.
Yeah, and that was, so one of the couple of things in the notes this week and next week will be things that I learned training. Yes, that's just, always how it goes. So yeah, I know more now than I did a week ago. It's always a good thing.
I've been doing the same thing. So I've been working on writing the Power Apps and Flow class, and I have 17 modules. I don't really know how I did that to myself.
How many hours are you planning to teach?
It's only like 10 hours. The math might not work.
No, it might not.
But so basically all the modules have been is like about 5 slides a piece, right? Because really when I teach Power Apps and Flow especially, it's almost 100% demo. There's just no reason to do anything else. So the slides are kind of more like reference stuff. But yes, it's been kind of fun because digging into it, I'm like, I mean, I literally told someone that Flow couldn't do something 2 weeks ago that I now figured out the roundabout way that you can make Flow do it because I was trying to document something for the class. And
yeah,
I love that stuff. It helps us as much as it helps them.
Absolutely. So that's good. So when is that the stuff that we've normally talked about? When is that training? We'll talk about it later, but
November something. I should write that down at some point. PowerAppsNow11.com/training. It's mid-November. And so the way we did it is we did so there's a 1 day I know nothing about Power Apps and Flow, and then there's a 4 day I built a Power App and Flow, but I want to actually know what I built, right? Try and help people that just cobbled a couple blog posts or videos together, and trying to actually help them solidify and learn a little more. So
that's a good plan. So a little, no matter what speed you're at, there's a place to jump into the training, and I like that.
All right. Backups for Office 365. Are you backing up Office 365?
That was one of the things they're talking about, what you have to learn when you're teaching a class. This wasn't specifically for this class because this is something that I talked with a customer about. But I had a customer who was migrating to Office 365. They didn't have any on-prem SharePoint or anything like that. And the topic in a room of people, business folks and IT folks and consultants and all that came up about backups. And the prevailing idea in the room when the conversation started was that you don't need backups for Office 365, that Microsoft handles all that. And I said, I did that thing where I kind of raised my hand and I waited for everybody to, because you know how I hate jumping in and and so I kind of waited for everybody to come to a consensus, and then I kind of raised my hand and I'm like, you absolutely need backups for Office 365. And they're like, what? No. So the IT folks were talking about stuff that they had heard from one Microsoft person and one of the, business folks, higher technical folks, like, well, I read some stuff, and I'm like, okay, all of those things are true. But when you're talking about backups from a nerd, from an IT pro standpoint, one of the reasons that you do backups is for business continuity. Like your data centers go down. One of the reasons you do backups is fault tolerance. Your servers lose hard drives or power supplies or motherboards or whatever. And one of the reasons that you use backups is to recover content. And Microsoft does the first two. They don't do the third one. So Microsoft owns the infrastructure. Microsoft owns the application. The customer owns the data. And so I started talking them through all the different things inside of the product. And I'm like, here's a situation where Microsoft stuff doesn't fix it. Here's another situation where Microsoft stuff doesn't fix it. They don't do content backups. They're fault tolerance, they're business continuity, they are not content recovery. And as I started walking through all these scenarios, I started seeing little lights flicker. And so that's something I had never really talked about before with the customers, because I guess I just assumed but that was a thing that I thought was interesting, the misconceptions about that.
Well, I would tell you that, for better or for worse, I literally do not know a single customer that is backing up Office 365.
I know a couple, but your idea is solid that it is a very fringe thing in very small minority of people. And a lot of that is because of things like, the versioning is turned on everywhere in Office 365. So if a document gets mangled or corrupted, you can pull the version back. The recycle bin is 90 days, which is huge. That's great. But there are a lot of scenarios where the backups don't catch things. For instance, it doesn't do anything. Well, I guess one of the big things is you can only do a restore in place, which doesn't allow you to do some things. Another thing is it doesn't, the built-in stuff doesn't handle anything outside of content. So if you've got a document library and you set a bunch of things up for compliance or something like that, and you delete that column, it's gone. Like there's just no way to get it back. There's just all these little fringe areas. And that's what when I was talking to the customers and in the training class, I mentioned the ones that I could think of. And I'm like, if this doesn't bother you, or if you're okay with losing these things, you probably don't need backup software. But if any of these things are things that would freak you out, you might need some backup software.
Sounds like a stellar blog post for Mr. Todd Quinn to write.
I need to flesh it out more. And then the next question, always, once they've seen that, they're like, who should we use? And my discussion at that point is, so I had a training class yesterday with a customer, and I said, do you already have any kind of relationship with any vendor that offers, Office 365 backup? And they said, oh yeah, we use this we use this product for this, and this. I'm like, okay, start there. I'm not saying you should use them, but it's their gig to lose. Look at what they have, see if it covers your things. You're probably going to get a better bundle. You've got one place to call if things are a problem. Start there, and then if not, go look at some of those. So there's a bunch that are out there. I think AvePoint's got something, Veeam's got something. In the chat room, somebody mentioned one. Brody mentioned Unitrends. I haven't used them. So there's just a bunch of things out there, but just something that you don't think of. And like Mark Christman says, DR and HA are different, or he says difficult conversations, but they're also different. Disaster recovery and high availability and all that. You just have to understand all those different things. So it was a good conversation to have and I had it twice. I had it Friday at the training, and then I had it this week also. Just uncovered some rocks there. It was good stuff.
Yeah, well, yeah, one of the ones that, so I had a customer who asked me kind of that similar conversation last week, but not in the context of backups per se. But so he has like one document library with, let's just say, literally 1 million items in it.
Okay.
But it's broken into folders at the top level, and let's say then maybe every folder has 250,000 items down, in folders. Right? He's broken it up pretty well, but at the top level, there's 4 folders, each with 250,000 items. Someone grabbed folder 4 and accidentally drug it into folder 3. It took him, I think, almost 7 days to untangle, right, to move I think it took 3 or 4 days for the move to finish, because SharePoint basically just queued up that it needed to move that from there, and so, something somewhere behind the scenes just chugged and moved it for 4 days, and then it took him 4 more days to grab it from the subfolder and copy it back out. It was he was trying to ask me ways to stop that from ever happening again, and I was like,
don't use folders.
Yeah, I had nothing to offer him there, but it was a weird scenario. So just back to this idea of fringe cases and things that come up.
Yeah, and then I also kind of mentioned the situation I talked about last month with the customer I had that accidentally deleted 90-some thousand pictures, and it was all in there. Microsoft's software worked, but a lot of times third-party software doesn't add new capabilities. It just makes the existing capabilities a little easier to use. And for me, it would have taken, had they just used the out-of-the-box tools, it would have taken them weeks to click all the documents in the screen, restore, wait for the thing, click the next page with the because there's 90,000 of them. It'd take forever. They were all in their recycle bin. So then the next step was to write some PowerShell, but that took a little while, and then you could only run one of those. So I had, that whole process, I got it down. I got all the files restored in like 3 days, but using the out-of-the-box tools, it would have been a week more. Yeah. But it's something to think about if you're moving a lot of stuff to Office 365. Look at the backups, see what it does, see what it doesn't do.
All right. Other things you should think about, and back to protecting your Office 365 investments. Make sure you check out our friends AppRiver, right? ToddQuint.com/AppRiver.
We love AppRiver.
We love our AppRiver, and They are all about providing additional security and anti-phishing and auditing and all types of support capabilities to Office 365. So if you're reselling Office 365, right, you need a provider to you to be able to resell it. I would wholeheartedly recommend you check out AppRiver. They've got lots of good programs to kind of get you going. And just, they've been doing it for a long time. They're solid. They think about all these fringe cases and have to deal with them all the time. So no surprises for them.
Yeah, and they've been doing the SharePoint thing since before SharePoint was cool. So they've got the rich background that you and I have. They can sit back and wax nostalgically about back in my day, I remember when. I mean, that was one of the things when I was teaching the class this week. This company itself was moving from file shares to Office 365. So this company didn't have any SharePoint on-prem, but those people hadn't only ever worked there. So, when I went in the room, I'm like, do you have any on-prem experience? And there were a couple of people there that had worked with SharePoint on-prem at other jobs. I'm like, oh, so you're going to appreciate all my stories about, why we have hub sites now and how we had to use sub-sites on-prem and all these other things. It was good to find those people.
Yeah. So keeping up with people finding people, it looks like our friends at IBM, I know we're all big IBM supporters.
Love IBM. What do they even do? Typewriters, right? The Selectric. I love their stuff.
Wait, no, I am their stock. Don't say negative.
Oh.
But IBM just announced they completed the proper processes to purchase Red Hat. And so if you are not aware of Red Hat because you're a Microsoft person, good for you. So Red Hat is a purveyor of a flavor of the Linux OS.
Yep.
And you're like, wait, Linux is free, so how do they make, $34 billion worth of revenue?
Mm-hmm.
So what Red Hat really is Red Hat is a support company.
Yeah.
They provide support and packages and add-ons and, ways to do private clouds and all types of shenanigan stuff, but it's all really based around their own little flavor of Linux. So, I don't know, this is an interesting play by IBM. I have so many opinions, but I don't really want to get into them. I don't know, what's your first thoughts?
I think IBM has been for a decade or two struggling to find its way in the world. And I think this is a very bold purchase of theirs to try to figure out, their cloud play. Yeah, so Red Hat. So one of the things, got to tell the old joke. Linux is only free if you don't value your time. That's the old joke. Red Hat has a for pay version. It's Red Hat Enterprise or whatever, which is the thing that you mentioned. But then they also have a free version called CentOS, which is their free version that is a subset. I can't remember if it's like the beta for Red Hat Enterprise or it comes out after Red Hat Enterprise, but it's based on the same sort of code, but it's free as in beer and might be free as in speech too. I forget, but that's the community stuff that, so they're huge. I mean, in the Linux world for enterprisey things, not for, home stuff, for enterprisey things, Red Hat's been the big player forever. Absolutely. And yeah, so I think this really, IBM's been trying to figure out what it wants to be when it grows up. And I think this solidifies that it wants to be a cloud platform, cloud support, all that. And yeah, so I'm curious. Yeah, 34 billion was the price tag on that. That is gigantic. Not as much as the last lottery, mind you. Or, more than, the last lottery was 1.6 billion. That's right. So even more than the lottery. Yeah.
Yeah. And right. And I think their big play is sound like another company we're both very familiar with, is trying to make this private cloud that is open, but it's not really open because, it's packaged software that's, it's packaged open software, if that makes any sense. Yeah. But so you can kind of run that same type of cloud model on your premises or in their premises in the cloud.
Premises. Yeah, they're bundling in the management and all that, because that was always the problem with our former employer, was all the pieces were there, but the management and all that, getting it together, was always the value that they added, and that's what Red Hat does. So I'm curious to see how this all works. I'm not much of a Linux guy, obviously, but I really hope that IBM does right by Red Hat and keeps it going and keeps it vibrant and all that. It's an important part of the tech nerd ecosystem.
Yeah, and right now their plans are, it's going to be a standalone business unit, so they're not going to try and roll it into, IBM, Red Hat division. They're going to let it kind of stand alone. But we also know that those types of wins change pretty fast. So.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, the other thing though is I just worry about the timing, right? And I'm out of touch with that world over the last few years, but are on-premises private clouds, like, I feel like that was like a big topic for a while that people talked about, but no one actually did. Or so are people actually doing those now, or did we all just give up and say we're just going to put it all in Azure or AWS and the heck with on-premises private clouds? I don't know the answer to that. But
I don't either. That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, a lot of our stuff is shifted to the cloud, and I just kind of assume that's where everybody went. But I also recognize there's a big tech world out there that you and I don't touch. So I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, and so we're kind of piggybacking on this idea of a big tech world and not really knowing too much.
Our bread and butter, not knowing too much.
It is. So I don't know about you, but I have about 5,722 LinkedIn friends or acquaintances, whatever the connections, I think is what they call them.
Yeah.
Because for the most part, if you seem like a legitimate human being and you send me a request thing, I accept it.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm mostly not very discriminant about that, but I never go looking for people. Like, I mean, I literally just go in and click the button. Yes, we can be connections. But sometimes, you know, at night, I like to stay up after everyone goes to sleep around this joint because that's when I get my quiet time.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to just scroll through LinkedIn, see what people are doing, and mostly make fun of them, people that use it like Facebook and all that.
Yeah. I'm with you.
But so I was rolling through, and so one of my connections that I didn't know, his title was something like, you know, senior technology consultant, you know, sounded like somebody who was kind of like one of us, but not really tied to specific technology. He had posted, he said, hey, you know, what do you guys think of G Suite and, you know, all of the things going on in that space? Okay.
Seems like soliciting an opinion there.
It does, right? That seems like something. So I chimed in with, you know, well, my experience with that whole platform has been, you know, when I personally was involved with a bunch of startups, they were all running it. And really the only reason for running it was because it wasn't Microsoft, right? They literally had no idea. They didn't even know what the platform did. They just needed a tool like that, and they didn't want to run Microsoft.
Yep.
So that was their number one reason. And I said, and, you know, so I had to work with it. And quite frankly, it wasn't very good. It was 5 years behind everything in Office 365 at best, and it just wasn't a good experience. Mm-hmm. That was my feedback. He comes back with something very, as I categorized it on LinkedIn, rude. Mm-hmm. So I respond and say, that was rude, which I probably shouldn't have, but I said, that was rude. And then I tried to clarify again, like, this is not blanket statements. I didn't say G Suite is just terrible.
It has no redeeming qualities whatsoever.
Yeah, I said, I had to use it with customers, and in our scenarios, it was terrible, and it doesn't have the features of Office 365. These were my statements, so, you know, wasn't blanket statements, just trying to help. Yep. And then we kind of had a couple more back and forth, and he mostly kind of, I felt like came around to like, okay, you know, agree to disagree, but yeah. You know, we seemed to end in a civil spot. Didn't think anything of it. 2 days later, I get a message from someone, and it's very derogatory, very inappropriate, like, you know.
Things about your mother and all that. It was very uncalled for.
Even worse, he talked bad about Skyline Chili.
Oh.
So like, this guy knew enough about me to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I mean, like, he went and did a bunch of homework to say a bunch of mean things about me personally, and then he immediately blocked me. Like, sent it, you know, hit send, hit block, and like at the end he like laughed, I blocked you, so you can't do anything about this.
Oh, he even acknowledged it. Oh man.
Yeah. So I've taken to Twitter, and I'm like, LinkedIn, what up? You know, you can't let someone like send me a derogatory email and not give me any mechanism to do anything about it. And so they are going to look into it. I have not provided them all the details, but I just wanted to kind of throw this out there, A, because I was really angry, B, but more importantly, right, I mean, if you ask for people's opinions and you get their opinions in a platform like this, right, where, you know, thousands of people have read, right, when I mentioned the thread, Todd had seen me and this guy interact, so Todd knew who it was. Hopefully all you know who he is. I mostly want to say his name, but we
don't, yeah, I'll bleep it out. I stopped doing production, I'll bleep it out.
But, you know, you've got to you got to be a grown-up. I don't know what else to say. I mean, if you're going to get someone's opinion and you don't like it, that's great. But, poop on their favorite food and then block them and laugh about it is just, it's just wrong.
So one thing that's funny about this is you broke the cardinal rule of the internet. You fed the trolls, and never feed the trolls. Once he did the pooping on you, you should have just and the reason that's super duper funny is because I can think of a couple times where similar stuff to this happened in real life, and I poked the you can think of the situation I'm thinking of, but
I know, but I didn't feed the troll. I had a conversation. The conversation ended. I mean, we didn't have the troll fight. I didn't have any troll fight. He sent me a troll email, and there was nothing I could do about it.
Yeah. Well, I think as soon as he spewed the hatred that resulted in that was a rude request. I think that's when,
Okay.
That was when you got a glimpse that he wasn't actually wanting the thing that you wanted. He wanted confirmation. He didn't want a discussion. Yeah. But that's unfortunate. And I guess the thing, so I've been reading, because obviously in our political climate is really focused on this kind of horrible behavior.
Yeah.
But I was reading somewhere, I wish I could find it, or maybe it was in a podcast. Oh, I think I was listening to Dax Shepard's podcast, and he had Dr. Drew on there. And Dr. Drew said something about how, discussing things is how we learn. It's how we expand our knowledge. Like you got to talk to people that don't agree with you. You just got to, or else you don't learn anything, and we don't progress. So it's not about, you and him having differing opinions. There's both something for you guys to learn there. Like, you haven't touched G Suite in a couple of years. Maybe there's a couple of things that it really did poorly back then that they fixed that you don't know about because you've written it. I mean, there's just all kinds of ways that can go well. But yeah, when people get, he probably felt like you were calling his baby ugly or something, and he got upset.
Yeah. People, and I'm with you right on the Discord, because Facebook's a great example of a place that 99% of the time I just don't participate, right? I watch because I've got friends that are super left. I've got friends that are super right. I have almost no one that ever posts about middle things.
Well, that's the thing. You can't be, rabidly moderate. Like, you can't, there's just no way to do that, and there's no interest in it. I mean, there's just no platform for it. And so I try to read things that are differing opinions of mine, but it's all in the delivery. If they're reasonable about it, I will read through it, and I can think of a couple of things. I don't want to get in any political realms, but there's been a few things in the news lately that have come up and people were just really angry about, and I can't believe this person did this. I can't believe this person said that. And I agreed with them. I thought the thing was terrible. And then somebody else is like, it's kind of like this, and if you look at the information, it's really like this. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that wasn't nearly as incendiary as I thought it was. But I got to listen to the people that I don't agree with. And so it's too bad that this person couldn't do it. The internet's been rough, rough on you. So Sling came around. Maybe this person will come around as well. Maybe they'll.
Oh, yeah, or either that or LinkedIn will throw him off.
Oh, yeah. Throw him off. Yeah, and the lesson for this, everybody, just be nice. Just hug it out. Speaking of being nice, let's follow this up with a happy thing. You had a happy thing happen. Let's talk about that.
Which is my happy thing? It is... Okay, yeah. And just so we know, I have a meeting, so I got a hard stop.
Okay, all right.
But, yeah, so I was in... so one of the groups I belong to is a little private group of a bunch of the flow geniuses of the world. I don't know how I got invited because I'm not a flow genius, but I snuck into the group because I bribed somebody. And so we were chatting about some flow stuff, and I'm like, one day I hope to be, I think the way I put it was, one day I hope to be smart enough to be able to learn from you guys, right? Like the stuff that, John Liu and Serge and Paul Clumsy post about flow is just, and Weirzy Kent, is just so up here that I'm like, I don't even understand enough. I'm not smart enough to even understand what you're talking about to learn how to do those things from you guys. But then Serge, kind of replied back to my comment and said, we're just, basically we're repaying you, right? And I'm like,
it's Serge Luca, by the way. You didn't give. There is more than one.
No, there's not. There's only one Serge.
That,
but so he said that he got his start with PowerShell way back in 2010 from that crazy SharePoint conference that you and I went and did, and man, the flood of memories that just came back from the SharePoint Conference 2010 was just bonkers, right? I mean, so it was really nice of Serge to say that. He was probably lying, but it really made my day to hear that.
Yeah, well, even if he's like, and so for those of you who don't know Serge, he is, I think he's an MVP. Yeah. He's in Belgium, I think Brussels, and has been, again, another of those guys just been around forever. I don't know when he wasn't there. But yeah, so that's, I mean, it's always crazy to think that we've helped any of these people because I don't think that I have anything to offer these people. So it was super cool of him to step up and say that too. That is such a humbling thing. So, yeah.
So yeah, good guy, man. But the stuff that those guys can do with Flow is just bonkers. So Flow is just such an underappreciated product right now, right? Almost literally no one knows about it still, and we kind of made that reference earlier. But yeah. I look forward to when the world embraces it, and then the world does enough of it to realize that it's really cool, and then you find these other things it can do, and then it's just like mind-blowing cool. So
yeah, when I've tried to embrace it, and you've been on the business end of that, it's been that thing. It was our PowerShell technique. Okay, I have to do a thing. I'm pretty sure Flow will do it, and then I start doing it. And I'm like, and then this thing that in my head is 3 lines. I get you on, and it's like 12, and you got to know this secret thing here, and you got to paste a GUID in there, and I'm like, this is why Flow is not catching on. This is it.
Yep. I had a conversation I will not rehash here, but it was very much in that trying to help Flow team people understand, right? They are suffering from the curse of knowledge huge right about now, right? They're like, oh, but Flow can do all these things. I'm like, no, Flow can do all those things if you have a PhD in Flow. I need to be able to do those things with Flow without knowing anything about Flow. That's really where they need to get to with some of the different pieces, and we'll see what happens.
Yep. We have a couple of items left, but you pick one. I think the last 3 are all yours. Pick one, and that'll give us time to do our stuff at the end and give you a chance to powder your nose before your meeting.
All right. We'll do at least this one. Ran into Mike Smith. He's been a SharePoint MVP also for 10 plus years.
Yeah.
So he does a bunch. I mean, his full-time job is a trainer. He does training day in, day out. Yep. And so he told me about a new book he had just written. It's called SharePoint Calculated Columns and Validation Formulas. Look at this. I even have a copy of a book. See, this is a physical book, people. If you were on the video, you'd see a physical book. Do you know these still exist?
That is an incredibly niche book.
So it's interesting, though, because right at first, people like you and I, who needs something like that? But really, I started thumbing through it, and there is so many cool little things in here around how to write these different calculated columns and views, and a lot of the web parts now in SharePoint Online are moving to this formula-based reference to kind of roll up data and stuff.
Yep.
And so at first I was very dismissive, but I actually kind of looked at it and was like, I dig this. I dig it so much I'm actually going to show you guys. So
yep.
Kudos to Mike. There's a link in the show notes if you want to pick up a copy of it. But it's just a quick little, right? It's not a read. It's more about just this scenario and that scenario. It's got over 100 different code examples. Code's the wrong word, but formula examples for rolling this stuff up. So, I don't know. I kind of digged it.
That's very cool. And so I had a similar moment. I was at a customer's, the training place that I was at Monday and Tuesday. One of the people that I was talking to, she had a stack of books on her desk. And it was books on Teams, and one of them was our friend Melissa Hubbard, one of her Teams books. And I'm like, nothing against Melissa. She was, the last time we talked to her, she had something coming out, and we're all like, oh, that's great. But we were both thinking, nobody buys tech books anymore. But I walk into this office, and there it is. And I'm like, I feel like I owe Melissa an apology. But that is cool that people are still cranking them out. People are still buying them.
Yep. So speaking of cranking out real quick, I also did a Halloween-themed video on Power Apps. So it's talking about how to save data in Power Apps. So there's a link down below. I did some spooky stuff. I made my own sound effects. I sat here and recorded a bunch of type of noises so I could have noises because I didn't want to pay for them. So fun little video. I just wanted to kind of plug since it is totally Halloween-themed.
Yeah, and if you want these links, listeners, go to toddclint.com/podcast408. hopefully you will not get a request timed out. Instead, you will get the show notes and all the links that we've talked about.
Way to pull it back together. All right.
See what I did there? Yeah.
On the way out here, because you and I just had a whole bunch of community stuff, so the community corner's looking a little
Yeah, we need to get invited to some community stuff. If you've got a user group or whatever and you want us to give it some love here, shoot us. I'm at Todd Clint on Twitter, todd@toddclint.com. Let us know who you are, and we'll give you some love here. As for conferences, and there's some stuff that we need to add, but so first you start off. You got something?
Oh, yeah, so just a reminder about the Power Apps and Flow training in November, powerapps911.com/training. 4 or 5 days of live training with me, 17 modules, which I have no idea how I'm going to get through, but I will make it happen, Captain. Should be fun.
All right, and then a month from now, coming up, I'm going to be in Ljubljana, Slovenia for the Thrive Conference. I'm going to be teaching an all-day class on administration and then doing some other sessions. I'm doing one on migration and some other stuff. That's in Ljubljana. You can go to thriveconf.com and sign up for that one. If you are in Europe, you should definitely go to that one. Slovenia is a great place to visit. If you're not in Europe, you should go anyway because Slovenia is a great place to visit. And this is just a great excuse to go. You can write it off. It can be work. It can be all that. I will be there. And then in March, you and I will both be at the North American Collaboration Summit in Branson, Missouri.
Be lots of fun, right? I'm doing an all-day session on Power Apps and Flow, and I'm doing a side session on Power Apps and Azure SQL. And what are you doing? Are you just supposed to walk around, pick up after me? Is that your plan? I
forget exactly if it's identity stuff or I don't know. I've got so many things that I've sent out and I just don't know. And Lori will be there. So if you've ever wanted to meet Lori, the producer, she will be there also at Branson. She's always there at Branson. And then we don't have it in the notes, but SharePoint conference is 6 months away. The SharePoint conference in Vegas. We're coming up on that. So I think you and I will both be there doing various things at the SharePoint conference.
Yeah, they already signed us in for, right? We're doing
an all-day session.
An all-day session, right? So that's the only thing we are contractually obligated to do at this point.
Yep. And then we don't have it in here also. SP TechCon in Austin. I think that's in February. I think we're both going to that one. So it is busy. So we'll get all that stuff out there.
Good thing I'm Superman. I can get it all done.
Yes, and it's a good thing I've got these impressive specs. I will be bringing them to all the conferences.
All right. Well, Chewy has lost his mind, so it must be time to call it a show.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. We will see you next week. And again, you can go to toddclient.com/podcast 408 to get all of the glorious links for the things that we have talked about. See you guys next week.
Toodles.